In the following video, you will see the installation process of a 1995 through 99 Dodge Neon 2-liter dual overhead natural aspirated crank scraper with windage tray and baffles. The setup is for a Cali's 2.2-liter stroker crank 90mm with eagle rods and ARP main studs. Please keep in mind that the information in this video comes with the built scraper and is not my own. The information is from Instillation Johnson Crank Scrapers. If you are having trouble with the installation, please seek out professional help or contact Instillation Johnson Crank Scrapers at phone number 727-808-8602 or by email at sales@crank-scrapers.com. They will help you with your setup. Your crank scraper in the mail. First you want to unpack it and make sure all your parts are here. So this is the crank scraper for a 2.2-liter stroker crank from Cali's. It's a 90mm throw. The windage tray, which comes already attached, and then what they don't show is the baffles. These are your baffles with the doors. You'll set this up so that the baffles doors are towards each other so that the oil sump sits here. So I have all the pieces I need to do this. Just need to check the fitment, which we'll do here in a moment, and then make sure it all fits and make adjustments as needed. Dodge Neon 1995 through 1999 2.2 scraper and windage tray. Today we'll be showing the installation of this particular scraper. Please do note that each scraper and vehicle and engine will be different slightly. This is more of a guide, not a how-to. So I have a Dodge Neon engine here. It's been fully built. All the internals. Just going to rotate the engine over so that the oil pan surface faces up. Like so. I will have to remove these supports and support the engine from underneath so that the engine doesn't fall off this way. Okay, so now the engine is over, the brackets are removed. I'm just going to clean some of this oil up that's been dripping down because the engine has been sitting for a while. You need to have a very good clean surface when you're doing this. So all I'm doing is taking some parts cleaner here and I'm just going to wipe it away, making sure that the surface is nice and neatly clean. Otherwise your silicone gasket will not set properly. Any amount of oil film will cause a leak later on. Oil will find a leak no matter what it is. If there's any debris on your surface, please remove it at this time. So I'm just feeling here for any oil spots. You'll notice if there is a spot where there's oil on it. In this case there isn't. I have thoroughly cleaned it. I do have some silicone from when I installed the pump, so I will clean this up a little bit here in this spot. Okay. Okay, move on to the crank scraper. You will notice the shape. It is square almost, and then one corner is diagonal. The corner that's diagonal will be your left rear when the engine is facing up, but it's the right rear on this one. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to set this in here like so. I am going to take a few bolts, preferably about 4 or 6. Put a couple in each corner and line this up. You want to line this up so that it is correct spot. Let me take another one for this back one here. So if you need to, do make marks and note where the marks are when you do this. And once these bolts are in, I'm just going to rotate the engine over and make sure nothing comes in contact. And I also want to have 40 thousandths of an inch clearance from the crankshaft counterweights and also the rods as well. Okay. I'm just going to tighten this down snugly so it does not move on me. So now I'm going to bring you over here so you can watch from my point of view. I'm going to rotate this over for you now. Do note that when you put a scraper in, you want to make sure none of the parts come in contact. You want to make sure that the oil pickup tube fits properly. So I'm just going to rotate this over. So most of this does not come in contact. You may have to modify the crank scraper. I duly note that I have made some marks already off camera because it does get real close in this section here, and on the same thing on the other side. And then coming around, the scraper, the crankshaft does hit the scraper on cylinder 2, so I will have to make adjustments and finalize this. I've rotated it over and noted my marks. I will modify the pan, or not, I will modify the scraper to the pan and also to the crankshaft. An easy way to do this is to take a carbide bit, something like this, basically, or you can also use a die grinder, cut off wheels if you have to. So I will make my adjustments and I'll be back. Okay, we're back. I did make my modifications. I had to grind here, 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 and here, 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 and here, and I had to bend these sections here back further because they came in contact with the crank. I did make my modification for my oil drain port nuts for the turbo. Now the only thing left to do is to retest fit this. and go on to the baffle option, which I have opted for this particular motor. So anytime I'm not working with the engine, it's a good idea to cover it up. That way you don't get any particles that you don't want in there. If you're doing it on an engine stand like I am, it's great to do it like I do. If you're doing this in a vehicle and you have the pan off, it's a little more difficult. It may be, because you may have to have another person help you. So all I'm going to do is that I'm just going to set this back in here, and I'm going to line it out with my marks that I had made earlier. So, line you up there. And then once again, you will rotate this engine over. And check again for your clearances. Instructions that come with this scraper wants 40 thousandths minimum, which isn't ideal. So as I'm turning this over, I'm looking for any part of the crankshaft that may come in contact still, and I will make more adjustments if I... Okay. I have made my corrections and rechecked, and everything works out with the scraper now. So now we'll move over to the baffles and the oil pan. As I had noted before, I had to make an adjustment for the oil drain nuts for the turbo, which I have. So now I'm just going to set the baffles up and make sure the pan fits, because these are close tolerance. So these baffles should sit here and here, and the doors, trap doors, should be able to move freely, open and close without any interference. So I'm going to put the baffles on, and then we're going to check clearances for that. Do note that these are locking nuts, and they do have washers that go underneath. You will note that one side has a cutout here and here. This is for the oil sump pickup tube. All I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up and leave it kind of snug so I can move it around if I have to. I'm not going to go full tight with these yet. I'm just gonna, I'll just center it a little bit, and there's one. Okay, there's two. So these parts are going to sit in the deepest part of the sump in the pan. Just set this in here and line your marks up from the block, because it's always a good idea to mark the block and also mark it on the pan so you know your exact marks. And then you should be able to take a long screwdriver of some sort or something similar and be able to poke down in there and move the doors freely. Okay, that one moves. That one should be okay. If they do not move freely, mark the area and make corrections as needed. And then from there they should fit. If you have to make more corrections, keep doing so until they fit properly. So this pan fits, all matches up on this pan. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the rest of the bolts and snug them up. Here we have the crank scraper, window tray, and the baffles all set up. I do know you want to put your oil pickup tube in here like this, how I have it, before you put this section on. I marked it and then loosened it, put it on here, and then I kind of snugged the bolts a little bit. It's not too tight on here. Just so I can get my oil pickup tube in here. You want this one. This particular motor uses an O-ring for the pickup tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lubricate this so it doesn't roll over or break anywhere and lose oil pressure because it can't pick up enough oil. Okay, so I've lubricated it. I'm going to set this down in here. Do note when you do put these together, you want all the surfaces, even the oil pan surface, the block, and the crank scraper to be completely dry and clean and free of oil. So, before I stick this oil tube in all the way, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to take some brake or parts cleaner here and get rid of any residue that's not needed. Clean it up. So the pan's clean. I'm just going to run it along the edges here, the crank scraper, make sure this is clean. Again, I'm going to clean the block surface because I did have the crank rotate and then I had the scraper on and off a couple times. A very clean surface will make a very good seal on the surface. Okay, so now that this is all cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and apply some silicone around the pan. RTV Black, right stuff, it's some good stuff. There's a Chrysler rear differential cover sealing. Gray silicone, it works really well. You want to allow enough time for this stuff to set up, at least 24 hours. Even though it says you can start using it in like 2 minutes or something, it does not create a good seal once you get any oil there, because it starts penetrating and then you get leaks later on. So you don't need very much of this, just a nice good bead, kind of like I have. Too much, if you glob it on there, it's just going to squeeze out and create a mess. I'm not going to be using very much here, as you can see. I just need at least an 1/8 inch bead. So I'm going to just do this here. If you do see some squeeze out and it's too much, you can always clean it off real fast with a rag and some parts cleaner. It doesn't take much to clean this up when it's still in its gel liquid form. If you have to stop and start, try to overlay it like I am right here. It helps create a good seal. And you will do this for both sides. You'll do it on the block side and the pan side and the scraper to make it a good seal. And on edges like this, I'm just going to take some and put some along the edge and the cracks, because it's a good spot where it can leak. God, this is hurting my forearm. So here's one side. I'm just going to, I have a little time to work with this, so I'm just going to set the scraper down to where my marks are that I had made earlier. There and there, and then I'm going to try to get this oil pickup tube set in here and seat it as it should be. So I'm going to take this oil pan's on. Silicone's somewhat dry, but you want to let this set for 24 hours. When you do one of these, I also want to make another note that you want to make sure, if you're doing this in a car, do not use the starter to turn this over. Always do this by hand. Once you get the crank scraper in and it's all bolted up, torque the bolts to manufacturer specification. Rotate the engine again to make sure so nothing's catching, and then it should be good to go. Wait 24 hours and then you can fill it with oil. That is how we do a 99 to 95 or 95 to 99 crank scraper.